I was scrolling through Instagram when something stopped me in my tracks. At a Philadelphia church, MAGA supporters tried to push their way inside. The response? A firm, unyielding "you're not coming in. This is sacred." But this isn't just about a standoff, it's about history. Black churches were built because black people were barred from white churches. Today, outsiders are trying to test those boundaries. What happens when sacred spaces are challenged, and why does it matter to all of us? Stay with me, because the story behind this confrontation will shock you, and it goes far deeper than politics. I was planning to make a different video when something on my Instagram feed stopped me in my tracks. I could hardly believe my eyes. At Larry Kressner's town hall, held at Mother Bethel Church in Society Hill, a clear and unyielding message echoed, "You're not coming in. This is sacred." Repeated insistently, the words drew a firm line. Entry was simply not allowed. When someone asked why, the response was blunt: "Because I said so." Questions about presence and timing were met with the same resolute refusal, emphasizing the inviolability of this sacred space. As tensions rose, warnings flew: "Don't threaten people," while those outside described being blocked by what amounted to a human wall, denied access despite attempting to attend the event. The moment highlighted not just rules, but a profound assertion of boundaries, authority, and the sanctity of space. In Philadelphia, a tense scene unfolded as MAGA supporters, including fans of Charlie Kirk, attempted to force their way into a historically black church, guarded by what some called a blue wall. This moment carries deep historical resonance. The African Methodist Episcopal Church, founded by Richard Allen in Philadelphia, arose because black people were systematically excluded from white churches, a legacy rooted in slavery. Black congregations were often surveilled or entirely segregated, and black communities built their own churches and schools to practice faith and education independently. Fast forward to today, and the dynamic has flipped in a strange, confrontational way. Some white individuals who once insisted on separation, claiming they disapproved of black culture or dialogue, are now showing up at black churches, often in response to outspoken black pastors critiquing figures like Charlie Kirk. The black community's reactions have been a mix of bewilderment and resilience, as people question why this intrusion is happening now, on top of so many historical and ongoing challenges. It appears that many of the MAGA supporters attempting to enter black churches are predominantly white males, motivated in large part by sermons delivered by certain black ministers that criticized figures like Charlie Kirk in ways that the MAGA movement found objectionable or provocative. The very notion that these individuals would target a house of worship raises important questions about respect, boundaries, and the role of sacred spaces in society. Why would anyone feel justified in entering a church with the intention of confronting or intimidating congregants? Such actions are more than just disruptive. They strike at the core of communal sanctity, worship, unsettling parishioners, and creating an environment of tension and fear in places devoted to faith, reflection, and spiritual rejuvenation. The implications go beyond mere disruption. They challenge the very principle that religious spaces are intended to be safe, inclusive, and free from political intimidation. To fully grasp the severity of this behavior, it is helpful to imagine the reverse scenario. Suppose black conservatives had organized a demonstration or gathering in predominantly white churches to elevate Charlie Kirk as if he were a figure comparable to Martin Luther King Jr., and an incident of confrontation occurred. In that context, mainstream narratives would almost certainly cast blame on the black visitors, framing them as provocateurs or agitators, regardless of intent. This double standard reflects long-standing societal inequities in how race, power, and legitimacy are interpreted and enforced. In contrast, in the current situation, black congregations and their allies responded proactively to protect their sacred spaces. Barricades were formed, not as acts of aggression, but as necessary measures to maintain the integrity of the church, its worship, and its congregation. Notably, some white allies even participated in maintaining order, recognizing the need to uphold the sanctity of the space and prevent violence. Despite these defensive actions, mainstream media coverage has largely overlooked or minimized the protective measures taken by black churches. Instead, the focus often gravitates towards sensationalized narratives of confrontation, sometimes amplifying the perceived transgression of the outsiders while ignoring the historical and cultural context that makes such defensive measures necessary. This lack of coverage obscures the deep significance of the black church, which has historically functioned not only as a place of worship but as a cultural and political institution. From the earliest days of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, founded by Richard Allen in the late 18th century, black churches have served as centers of autonomy, education, social organization, and resistance against systemic oppression. They were established precisely because Black Americans were denied equal access to white-dominated religious spaces and have long acted as safe havens for organizing, learning, and community building. The attempted intrusion by MAGA supporters highlights ongoing tensions surrounding race, power, and cultural autonomy. It underscores the continuing relevance of the Black church as a symbol of both spiritual devotion and collective identity. These spaces are not simply buildings. They are repositories of history, resilience, and cultural memory, where generations have cultivated leadership, social cohesion, and strategies for survival in a society that has often marginalized them. Intrusions into such spaces are therefore not merely interruptions of services, they are challenges to a deeply rooted institution that has historically provided Black communities with both spiritual guidance and practical empowerment. The reactions of Black congregants, their allies, and supportive white participants demonstrate the importance of vigilance, preparedness, and solidarity when facing threats to these sacred institutions. Ultimately, this episode serves as a powerful reminder of the delicate balance between freedom of expression and respect for communal and religious boundaries. It emphasizes that Black churches, like all sacred spaces, require protection from external interference that seeks to intimidate, provoke, or disrupt. More broadly, it reflects the ongoing struggle for recognition, respect, and equality in American society, where historical patterns of marginalization continue to inform contemporary interactions. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for appreciating both the resilience of the Black church and the broader socio-political implications when outsiders attempt to intrude upon spaces that are foundational to cultural, spiritual, and communal life. Christianity in the Black community, especially in America, has deep roots shaped by history and the transatlantic slave trade. Our faith was largely learned from white Europeans. Yet now, when some white MAGA supporters or evangelical groups enter Black churches to protest, the implicit message is clear. Their version of Christianity is the only true form, while Black worship and traditions are deemed invalid or irrelevant. This boldness is unprecedented. In the 90s or 2000s, most white individuals would not have dared enter a Black church unless with harmful intent, as in the tragic case of Dylann Roof. Today, some feel empowered to disrupt services, emboldened further by certain Black conservatives who support these actions, signaling a disturbing lack of respect for Black spaces and faith. Even those who previously endorsed political figures like Trump now recognize the escalation of tensions, realizing that these confrontations, spurred by both ideology and racial dynamics, highlight how sacred Black institutions continue to face challenges and intrusion in ways they never did before. In my view, the current tension in America didn't begin with Donald Trump. It's been building for years, often fueled by frustrations rooted in democratic policies and inaction. MAGA supporters certainly feel their own grievances, but the broader societal tension can be traced back to the Obama administration, the rise of Black Lives Matter, and the national outrage for tragedies like Martin, Mike Brown, and Sandra Bland. Deep-seated anti-Black sentiment has long existed, and today's confrontations are, in many ways, an inevitable culmination of that history. Some argue that if Biden had won, the situation might have escalated even further. Additionally, the presence of Black conservatives, often labeled sellouts, is partly a response to what many see as Democrats failing to address systemic issues in Black communities. These overlapping frustrations from both sides contribute to the intense racial tensions we witness today. Today's racial and political tensions are fueled by multiple factors. On one side, you have white liberals promoting inclusion in many areas but often failing to meaningfully support the Black community. On the other, many Black Americans have grown frustrated with the Democratic Party, which explains shifts in voting patterns in places like Cook County and contributed to Trump winning several swing states. At the same time, the right continues to harbor overt racism, reflecting long-standing resentment that experts like Dr. Claude Anderson predicted would intensify by 2015. These overlapping frustrations, both from white communities tired of being told to support Black progress and from Black communities tired of political neglect, have created a volatile climate. In response, Black communities must increasingly rely on themselves, fostering internal responsibility and mutual support. This may mean looking beyond the U.S., investing time and resources into the global Black diaspora in places like Jamaica, Ghana, or elsewhere, as a way to build economic and social resilience independent of a system that has historically overlooked or undermined them. To navigate the challenges that lie ahead, the Black community must adopt a more strategic approach, one that emphasizes both internal solidarity and global connections across the broader African diaspora. Historically, Black communities have faced systemic barriers that have hindered economic, political, and social advancement. These disparities are not merely accidental. They are the product of centuries of exclusion, discrimination, and neglect. Yet, despite these challenges, there exists a remarkable potential for resilience, resourcefulness, and collective empowerment if communities are willing to unite and leverage opportunities deliberately. Self-reliance becomes not just a matter of principle but a necessity, particularly in a society where other groups have long demonstrated the ability to mobilize power, coordinate resources, and advance their interests effectively. The lesson here is clear. Communities that organize around shared identity and perceived threats often wield disproportionate influence, shaping policy, culture, and public narratives in ways that serve their collective goals. Consider, for example, the widely publicized case of the white woman killed in North Carolina. While her death was tragic on its own, it drew an extraordinary level of attention because of her Ukrainian heritage, which resonated with certain segments of white conservative communities. These groups mobilized quickly, turning her story into a broader narrative about perceived threats and cultural solidarity, even though many had previously opposed direct aid to Ukraine or shown little concern for global crises unrelated to their immediate interests. This case illustrates a critical point. Other communities are willing and able to rally around identity-based narratives to protect their members, amplify their influence, and secure resources. Meanwhile, the Black community, despite its numerical size and historical contributions to American society, has often struggled to replicate this level of coordinated mobilization and strategic advocacy on a comparable scale. Part of this challenge stems from internal divisions, political disenchantment, and external forces that actively undermine cohesion, but the lesson is clear. The ability to organize around collective interests and perceived vulnerabilities translates into tangible power. In response, Black Americans must begin taking a more intentional and organized approach to community development, advocacy, and resource management. This means establishing networks of mutual support, investing in community-based institutions, and creating channels for economic and political influence that extend both nationally and internationally. The global Black diaspora, including communities in Africa, the Caribbean, and Europe, represents an untapped source of partnership, collaboration, and innovation. By fostering relationships across borders, Black Americans can share knowledge, pool resources, and create economic opportunities that are less dependent on external political favor or domestic structures that have historically neglected their interests. At the same time, strengthening unity at home remains paramount. Internal cohesion, mutual accountability, and coordinated strategy are essential for creating a base of power capable of defending against external threats and advocating effectively for policies that advance the interests of communities. The challenges ahead are compounded by the current socio-political climate, which remains volatile regardless of leadership. Some analysts and commentators argue that widespread racial unrest has been contained, in part, due to the particular dynamics of the Trump administration, suggesting that under different leadership, tensions might have escalated more rapidly. Regardless of political affiliation, the underlying frustrations within the Black community persist, fueled by ongoing disparities in wealth, education, healthcare, and political representation. These frustrations are compounded by a sense of disillusionment and, in some cases, alienation from institutions and structures that historically promise support but fail to deliver. This cumulative sense of disappointment underscores the urgent need for proactive planning, resource consolidation, and internal empowerment. Without a deliberate strategy for mutual support, economic growth, and political influence, these frustrations risk evolving into deeper cynicism or disengagement, weakening the community's ability to assert itself effectively in broader societal debates. Self-reliance, in this context, is not merely a philosophical position but a practical strategy for survival and empowerment. It involves cultivating independent institutions, prioritizing community-driven initiatives, and creating sustainable economic ecosystems that are less reliant on external validation or support. Equally important is the cultivation of strategic alliances, both domestically and internationally. The global Black community offers opportunities for collaboration in trade, education, culture, and technology. Engaging with these communities strengthens resilience by diversifying sources of opportunity and influence, ensuring that Black Americans are not wholly dependent on the goodwill or inaction of domestic political actors. By leveraging global networks, the community can amplify its economic, social, and political power while reinforcing a sense of shared identity and collective purpose. Moreover, building solidarity requires deliberate investment in education, civic engagement, and leadership development. Developing strong local institutions, mentoring emerging leaders, and fostering community-wide political literacy are essential components of a strategy designed to secure long-term influence. These efforts empower individuals to act with agency, instill a sense of accountability, and cultivate the next generation of leaders capable of navigating the complex realities of modern society. At the same time, investing in global networks expands horizons, introducing innovative solutions and strategies that have been successful in other contexts, while reinforcing the interconnectedness of the global Black community. Ultimately, the path forward requires intentionality, vision, and a commitment to unity and strategic action. The Black community's ability to navigate the challenges of the present and future will depend on its willingness to rely on itself, foster solidarity at home, and cultivate alliances abroad. It is not enough to react to external pressures. Proactive engagement, structured planning, and collective empowerment are critical for transforming frustration and historical disadvantage into sustainable opportunity. By learning from the organizational strategies of other communities, investing in internal cohesion, and expanding influence across the global diaspora, Black Americans can ensure that their voices, resources, and power are leveraged effectively, securing a future defined not by external limitations but by deliberate collective action and resilience. Many Black conservatives today feel a profound sense of alienation, a feeling rooted not only in current political dynamics but also in decades of historical marginalization and systemic neglect. For some, aligning with the broader Black community seems to yield little tangible benefit, leaving them questioning whether their voices are truly heard or whether their interests are adequately represented. Over time, this perception of disenfranchisement has driven a segment of the Black population toward predominantly white spaces, both socially and politically, where they believe their perspectives may carry more weight or where they may find affirmation for values they feel are overlooked within their own communities. This shift has contributed to the growing number of MAGA-aligned Black voters, a demographic phenomenon that, while once relatively small and often viewed as anomalous, has become increasingly visible and significant in recent years. These individuals often cite dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party as a primary motivator, pointing to policies and political strategies that they perceive as failing to address the practical and systemic needs of Black Americans, from education and economic opportunity to public safety and community development. This trend toward alignment with MAGA politics reflects a broader and more complex conversation about identity, loyalty, and strategy within the Black community. It highlights the tension between cultural solidarity and the pragmatic pursuit of personal or collective advancement. Many of those who gravitate toward these spaces do so not because they reject their heritage or their communities, but because they feel that traditional avenues of political engagement have repeatedly failed to produce meaningful outcomes. Their decisions are often informed by a sense of realism. If the institutions that claim to advocate for them consistently fall short, then it may be necessary to explore alternative avenues where their voices might have more impact. The rise of social media and new digital platforms has further amplified this dynamic, allowing Black conservatives to connect, organize, and broadcast their perspectives more widely than ever before, creating communities of like-minded individuals who share similar frustrations. Personally, I identify as a registered Republican, but I do not align myself strictly with the MAGA movement. My approach to political engagement is guided by pragmatism and a focus on results rather than rhetoric or partisan loyalty. I aim to support candidates whose policies and actions demonstrate a genuine commitment to creating meaningful change, whether in education, economic development, criminal justice reform, or community empowerment. For many Black Americans, this approach may seem unconventional, particularly in a political landscape where party affiliation is often assumed to correlate directly with racial identity. However, the reality is that both major political parties have complex histories and patterns of engagement with the Black community, and blind loyalty can sometimes obscure the practical steps needed to advance collective well-being. The broader political reality underscores the sense of frustration and disillusionment that fuels these dynamics. Many Black conservatives and other politically engaged individuals perceive the Democratic Party as unlikely to implement substantive reforms, despite long-standing promises and advocacy. From systemic underinvestment in predominantly Black neighborhoods to failures in addressing education gaps, economic disparities, and public safety concerns, the perception is that Democratic policies often prioritize optics or broad-based agendas over the specific and urgent needs of Black communities. This perception fuels a cycle of skepticism and experimentation, where individuals explore alternatives, including conservative or non-traditional political affiliations, as a means of exerting influence and advocating for tangible outcomes. Beyond party politics, this phenomenon also reflects deeper societal challenges related to race, identity, and agency. The growing visibility of Black conservatives serves as a reminder that the Black community is not monolithic, It encompasses a diversity of perspectives, experiences, and strategies for navigating systemic inequities. At the same time, it exposes tensions that have existed for generations, tensions between self-reliance and collective responsibility, between cultural solidarity and pragmatic engagement, and between historical grievances and contemporary political realities. These dynamics are further complicated by external pressures, including the ways in which white political movements and media narratives often frame Black engagement, sometimes seeking to exploit divisions or delegitimize certain viewpoints. In response to these challenges, the concept of self-reliance and strategic internal collaboration becomes critical. For Black communities to thrive in the current environment, there must be a renewed emphasis on accountability, resourcefulness, and mutual support. This includes investing in institutions, businesses, and networks that prioritize the advancement of Black people, as well as fostering a culture of collaboration that transcends partisan or ideological boundaries. It also means recognizing the value of global connections, engaging with the broader Black diaspora in Africa, the Caribbean, and beyond to exchange ideas, share resources, and cultivate opportunities that may not be immediately available domestically. By building these domestic and international networks, Black communities can create resilient systems of support that do not rely solely on the promises or goodwill of political parties that have historically underdelivered. Ultimately, the rise of Black conservatives and the shifting political landscape reflect a broad imperative for strategic engagement and self-determination. It is not merely a question of party affiliation but of agency, influence, and the ability to secure tangible benefits for one's community. By acknowledging the structural limitations of existing political institutions, while simultaneously investing in internal cohesion and external partnerships, Black communities can better navigate the complexities of contemporary American politics. The choice to explore alternative political alignments, advocate for accountability, and prioritize mutual support is not a rejection of heritage or solidarity but a proactive strategy aimed at ensuring long-term stability, empowerment, and influence. In summary, the alienation felt by many Black conservatives illuminates a broader set of challenges and opportunities within the Black community. It highlights the limitations of traditional political allegiances, the importance of strategic engagement, and the need for self-reliance both within the United States and globally. As these dynamics continue to evolve, they underscore the necessity of intentional action, resourceful planning, and collaborative effort, essential ingredients for fostering resilience, amplifying voices, and creating sustainable pathways toward collective progress in a society still grappling with the legacies of inequality and systemic neglect.